HR is a great place to start for it because it's an important function in your company, especially when it comes to new people starting. If you're a new starter, you probably don't appreciate all the coordination that's gone into the onboarding process. Some of you may recall your first day at a new job where things haven't gone to plan. There's no one there to greet you and nowhere to sit. You haven't got a laptop or anything set up. Now, compare that to an experience where the organization leaves you feeling as if the entire day is left organized around your welcome. First impressions count, and they do have an impact on staff retention. So let's take a look at our first example. We're going to have a look at an onboarding form, and then a workflow that's going to manage those activities that we just talked about, rather than emails and spreadsheets to keep track of everything.
And so, Pete, this is something that we still see a fair bit of, where emails are sort of sent around to different people saying, hey, can you do this, can you do that?
That's right. It's difficult to keep track of where things are up to at any point in time without having everyone's inboxes visible on the page. So something I get asked a lot in workshops is, how can we make this process better? This question's almost always around forms and workflows. The tools of the past have shaped how people work today, but it's rarely optimal. And amongst all the manual steps, there's usually data re-entry from system to system, and this is where a lot of inconsistencies slip in. I don't know if anyone's finding that familiar, but this is a really common thing that people want to improve on. So for this example, I'm going to show you a really simple SharePoint form.
So Peter, it looks like you've just brought up what's recognisable to me as our basic intranet in a box type package. You're just going to use that as a framework for this demonstration?
That's right. This is our standard theme that we deploy to most people. I mean, change the colours and the iconography, but this is more or less what we where we start.
Just a quick rapid starter for an intranet.
That's right. It gives it a nice face. So we're logged in here as Megan. She's the recruiter in HR, and she's got someone starting in 2 weeks, and she needs to get the ball rolling to make sure that everything's set up for that person's first day. So as I mentioned before, the typical things might be scheduling an induction, getting a new laptop, having an email account set up, uploading payroll, all that type of thing. So let's have a look at the form I was talking about just a moment ago. I'm going to click here. While that loads in the background, here's one I filled out just a moment ago. This form captures details about the new starter, and it's going to kick off the onboarding process. In the past, Megan might have to stay on top of this, as we said, with emails and spreadsheets, but fortunately this form is the only thing that she has to fill out. By clicking save on this, a workflow is going to fire off in the background and kick off all of those tasks and assign each to a person responsible. That could be a person in finance, could be a person in marketing, or the employee's line manager. So let's take a look at what that workflow has done. Over here in the inductions task list, we can see the tasks that have just been generated from that workflow. They've been assigned to people, and you can see they've been backdated a week before the person starts, so we've got a bit of buffer time there. Lists like this give a great overview of where things are up to and what's left to do. This list can be filtered and reported on as needed, allowing the organisation to benchmark the ideal turnaround times for onboarding.
So Pete, and even in these tasks here, we can add additional information, right? Be it links to certain things they need to get done, or documents that also need to be formed, or other forms, whatever.
That's right, yeah.
The process.
What we're looking at here is just the title, but clicking to one of these, you can have as much detail in the task as you want.
And what happens if somebody's late on their task?
I'll get a tap on the shoulder, and if we come back to this list and have a look, the date will be highlighted in red, just to give you some visual feedback straight away that there's something overdue.
Okay, and that tap on the shoulder is a digital tap on the shoulder, right? They get alerted with an email or...
That's right.
Yeah.
So that list just got generated by the workflow. We've seen how simple that form was. The next thing to do is talk about documents. And with that, one of the first things that comes to mind is security. Often departments like HR are responsible for personal details, We want to make sure that these are kept safe at all times.
Really important.
HR is inherently full of personal data like salaries and bank details, next of kin, stuff like that. So how do we go about managing this data while it's in our organization? Or what happens when it leaves? Access to content within the organization is done with permissions. That means you can lock down an area of your intranet, so a select few have access to it, and it's invisible to everyone else.
And this is pretty much common. Everyone's already got that, right? It's just their permissions access. Whether it's even on folders or SharePoint, permissions is how most people manage things.
Yep. That's right. But even with that level of control, people still sometimes make mistakes. They might delete something in that secure area, or they might send an email outside the organization accidentally, whereas they meant to send to one of their colleagues. Then again, if we want to send information outside the organization to external parties, we have to rely on trust that they're not going to disseminate that content further. So in-place records management is how we can tackle the first problem, where people might delete something by accident. What happens here is the files are locked once they're put into the system, and that means the contents can't be changed. So if this is someone's contract that they've signed, their workplace contract, obviously we don't want someone coming in and fiddling with their numbers and changing salaries later on. So that's our first line of defense.
That means we don't have to worry about going back to things like backup or anything like that complicated. It's locked down, it's visible, they can still see it there, they just can't delete it or change it. It's a point-in-time capture, yeah?
That's right. So that can be automated by the system depending on the type of document that's being saved, or we can kick that off manually if it's something that the current user thinks is really important. The next one to talk about is data loss prevention, and this gives us a set of rules that we can apply to documents that keep sensitive information from leaving the company. So if I'm creating an email and attaching a file, I'll get a warning, or even the email might get blocked depending on what type of data is picked up inside that document, inside the attachment. So that's a really useful tool.
I'm sure there's been people on the call, I know I've done it in the past, that I've sent something to a Pete, but it was a Pete outside the organisation, and as I'm sending it, I'm like, oh no, Alex, remember the wrong person.
It doesn't help that we've got 3 Petes in.
Yeah, so if we've got sensitive information in there, we want the system to prevent us from making accidental errors. Yeah.
And the last one to mention is information rights management. So this is what we can do. This is how we can control documents once they've left the company. So once I've sent it out, I can say that this Word document can only be viewed, it can't be printed. And if you try and attach it or forward it on as an email attachment, it'll prevent you from doing that. So we can actually control things after they've left. Okay, well, that's enough on security. Let's get back to our new startup. They've been onboarded and we've secured their personal details. Now we might want to determine if they've read the induction material. I know this is something I get asked a lot. So it's around policies and procedures. People ask, how can I make sure that people are actually reading these things?
I remember on my first day, they sat me down, and it's quite a number of years ago at PA for me, but they said, hey, Andrew, there's the policies and procedures, and it's really important you read them. And I must admit, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. But, I was young, didn't realise how important those sort of things were. But obviously there's key to the way an organisation operates, so you do need to understand this stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And in an attempt to make that a more digestible experience for our new starter, what we've got here is a PowerPoint slide, a slide deck. So this has been embedded in our SharePoint page here. And in interest of keeping this simple and cost-effective, I've used a free plugin called Office Mix. And this allows you to create interactive presentations. So this one has a quiz at the end. We'll just skip through some of these slides.
So this is a free PowerPoint plugin, Pete, Office Mix?
That's right. It helps us create quizzes like this one. We'll just wait for it to pop up. So let's see. Shoelaces don't apply to WHS, but fire exits do. Let's hit submit on that. Hey, we got it right. So not only can you set up quizzes, questions like this, you can actually track how many people are looking at the quiz and what their scores were.
So we got a free Microsoft Office plugin we're using PowerPoint, and we're embedding that right in the SharePoint intranet site.
That's right. You don't have to go looking for it. You can make it front and center on your...
And it's interactive.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So I'll just have a quick look at what those stats look like. You can see here we've got a response rate of 47%, so we might want to bolster our WHS promotions within the company to bring that back up.
And we can even see the time people spend on the questions as well, huh?
Yeah, the number of visitors per slide and how much time on each slide. So, okay. Well, before we finish on the HR topic, I want to talk about something cool and new that Microsoft have brought out in Office 365. The idea of a personal assistant or digital assistant has been around for a little while now in our phones and those speakers at home. But Microsoft have made it really easy to get up and running with bots on your intranet. So putting ourselves back in the shoes of that new starter, we've done our induction, it's the next day at work, second day, and some details have slipped our memory. So rather than firing off emails to HR or our line manager, we can come to the FAQ bot and ask it some questions. So I'll just get started here and say hi. I want to know who is the head of finance. So just wait a moment and I'll just find the person.
Just letting everyone know, I'm not typing in these responses, Pete. This is the system giving the answers back to you, yeah?
If you could type that quickly, I'd be impressed. How about, where is the Sydney office? So at the moment, this bot is it's been hooked up to our people directory and it's pointing at our policies and procedures library. So questions I'm asking it, it's pulling out snippets of information that it finds that are relevant from our company's documents. I don't have to go and dig through them to find the second paragraph or the second page where that information is.
And this is quite funky because it's a little bit different to something like a standard search, right? We're not getting a big long list of answers back. We're actually getting a bit of targeted and grouped information in here rendered in a way that the bot's been configured to present these sort of information back. We've seen some graphical icons, some phone number and fax information being all added and captured in, to make it easier for the user. Is a bot's a lot more than search, Pete?
Yeah, they are. You can get bots to kick off business processes and other actions, much in the same way as we saw the workflows do a moment ago. So you could type into a chatbot to log a timesheet or request leave or book a meeting room. Really, it's up to you how complicated you make these things.
Okay, so it's a bit like a Siri or a Microsoft Cortana or something like that for your workplace in terms of being able to action things.
Yeah, that's it.
That's neat.
Okay, so just to summarise, we've made the onboarding process more efficient. We've secured some personal information. We've tested and tracked the user's learning progress, and we've given users an interactive way of finding information on our intranet rather than relying on email.